Hello friends, and welcome to Figure Study, where you might notice things are looking a little different. That's because I decided I wanted to try something new with regards to the backdrop and everything. I'm kind of feeling it out. Don't know if I'm going to keep doing it this way or not, but I'm kind of, for the time being, giving up on the backdrop thing because when I deal with the bigger figures, it's such a pain in the butt to try and keep everything framed while also not revealing the edges, so it's kind of like, we'll just have no backdrop, but I have put down the colored backdrop for kind of like a tablecloth type deal. So the idea is that I can still color code the videos. It's just going to be the surface that the toy is on that changes, whereas the background itself is just going to be the wall behind my desk. So we'll see how that goes. All of that aside, today we are looking at Tobot V Classic, which is probably the most annoying Tobot figure I've ever had to look up online because his name is Classic. That's almost as obnoxious as trying to look up a video game called Zombies. But my hang-ups about the extremely generic name aside, this figure is fantastic. And I'm also doing things a little bit differently this time because I love the car mode on this so much. I'm actually going to look at the car mode last. And that's also why the car mode wasn't in the intro of the video, because I kind of don't want to spoil it, though you could just look it up or already know what it looks like. But for anyone who doesn't know, I wanted to kind of keep it a little bit of a surprise. So anyway, right now what we are looking at is Classic's cute mode, his chibi mode, something like that. And it's kind of this weird little half-transformed mode that I wasn't super into looking at other videos and images and whatnot, but like actually having it in hand, it's really grown on me. This goofy little robot mode is actually kind of fun. Now he's definitely kind of like at this weird angle because of all the engineering involved, so he's a little bit, well, a lot of bit odd looking. But what's interesting is because of the angle going on here with the spine, it does get the torso in a more centered position with regards to the leg wheel platform thing. So it's not as off-center as I thought it would be, looking at the videos and pictures. And it's kind of interesting how they engineered this, where this half-transformed mode does kind of have the look of a smaller robot. They have little molded in and painted fingers right in here, so he's got like limited articulation, but he does have little movable arms. There's his teeny tiny little night-themed head kind of tucked away in there, and these little headlight wheel well shoulder, not quite shoulder pauldrons, but over the shoulder things. Car grill or the chest there, which also looks good. But we'll see most of this in the full robot mode. And then the back of the car kind of becomes the legs-ish. And these kind of read as feet, but I kind of prefer to think of them as like just giant wheel blocks that he kind of sits on and can roll around on. And there's this little platform thing that comes down for this mode that actually keeps him relatively well balanced, because if you fold that up, then he's going to want to do that. And yeah, this is just a cute little robot mode. He has his little shield and overly large lance accessory. I'll get into this more with the big robot. I'm not really a fan of this. He does have those, but I'm going to take them off so that we can take a look at his cute little robot mode without them, and here you can kind of get a better idea of his shape. And he's definitely a little bit of a mess, but it's a cute mess, and a mess that I think actually does kind of work. I will say his wave mate, if you want to call it that, Lightning's cute mode, I think works better than Classic's cute mode, but that's kind of where I can stop with the comparisons, because everything else about Classic appeals to me on an immense level. So yeah, he's like this cute little half-car R2-D2 knight-looking thing, and I love him. I didn't think I would love him as much as I do, but I totally do. Size-wise, to the head, he's about roughly standard deluxe size in this mode. In this mode. That's definitely going to change. Here he is next to a fellow Tobot V figure, in this case Captain Jack, who is, I think he's from an earlier season now. I don't know how they break this all up, but still Tobot V. Here he is with a more classic Tobot, that being Terrical. And yeah, the Tobot V stuff has generally been smaller than the classic Tobot stuff, so this should probably come as no surprise for anyone who's been following along. For the heck of it, here he is with, hang on a sec. For the heck of it, here he is with Tobot V Big Troll. And finally, give me a second to bring this back in. Here he is with the duck tank. Okay, now let me readjust this because he's definitely gonna get bigger. Let's turn this into the full robot mode. I really like how they did all this. I mentioned that already, how they incorporated this. It's really cool. But yeah, for the larger robot mode, we're going to fold this in. Now I do want to say, for anyone who might be curious, when you're transforming him into his car mode, you can actually leave this flipped out. So if you want to say, like if you're planning on going from the cute mode to the car mode, or for the car mode to the cute mode, you can just leave this panel flipped down and it will not get in the way of anything. For the big robot mode though, we're going to flip this up just to clean up his silhouette a little bit. So we brought down the legs. Now we want to unclip the trunk from the back here, and these bits here will rotate forward, and then these bits will rotate back and click into place, and that will give him his legs. And for now, we'll just bring these back down. These do get in the way if you're trying to bend the knees. Like you can see, they kind of block it after one click, but if you move them out of the way, then you can bring the knees back further. So you just kind of have to work around them. Unfortunately, there's no other thing to do with them. I thought maybe this red bit here was like a double hinge, but no, this is screwed in here and screwed in here. This bit does not move at all, it's just here. So you can't hinge it up and back and out of the way anymore, it's just gonna stay like that. So with that done, I want to bring this piece down, and it just kind of rests. Oh, also I brought the legs forward too much, so click those back one more. Because this is car mode, this is big robot mode, so this lays further, and like this just kind of naturally follows the curve of the back of the legs, which is nice. That's some pretty smart engineering. With the lower half done, just going to rotate this around. This bit kind of, it is meant to sit like this in car mode, but it kind of not locks, but it kind of settles in place like halfway between car mode and the big robot mode for the small robot mode. So you just want to bring it down more, and there's this little clip here that this will clip into. So bring that down and clip that in, and now he's got his proper torso. For the big arms, you want to take the little arms and bring them down and uncurl them, and there are fists in here that you just flip out. And now he has big robot arms. So there you've got big arm versus little arm. And the same thing here. And this is just kind of this is kind of amusing in its own right. This just amuses me. Anyway, and flip these bits forward, and then they come down. And these are kind of adjustable, and like where they settle depends on where the kibble can bang into things. So like if you have the arm forward like this, you can bring this down more. But if you want the arm a little bit more straight, then you want to, angle it so that it doesn't crash into that. So this generally, this angle tends to work pretty well for the shoulder pads. Then fold in the little robot head, and now comes the interesting part. So here is the toe key, which I did not talk about yet because it doesn't really store in the small robot mode like it can. It's actually kind of interesting. There's a cut back here so that if this is clipped in place where it normally goes, and this is brought out to where it normally is for the small robot mode, it does actually settle into the toe key there, and you can have the head up and all that, but the problem is these shoulder pads can't go back like they're supposed to, so you kind of have to have them up like this in order to have the toe key attached with the small robot mode, so I basically just leave it off to the side, but you can attach it. It's just gonna make the transformation a little bit awkward. But anyway, with the toe key clipped onto his back, you can bring the head down, but instead we're going to do one more thing with another kind of pseudo accessory that came in the box. That is the cape. He has this weird little cardboardy cape that you can clip onto his back, and I'm not a fan of how stiff this is, but I am a fan of how it looks. The problem with that is, it's a cape. Where do you put this when he's not in either of the other two modes? But anyway, to attach this, it's much easier after doing it the first time, because the first time these bits are just like straight, and it's getting things lined up as a pain. But once things kind of fold and conform to the shape of how they sit when attached, it's much easier to get them on again. So these just go around the little pegs for the toe key there, and they're pretty easy to hold in place with your fingers like this. And then it just clips into his back like I did before, and move the arms up and out of the way a bit so my fingers have room. So that clips in, that keeps the cape in place, and everything is good. Last thing to do is bring this down, and the platform that the big head sits on will peg into this little post right below the tiny robot head. And that will keep it in place, and rotate the head around. And there we have Tobot V Classic in his big and proper robot mode. And this guy looks extremely cool. I love the night motif that they've got going on here. The cape is ridiculous, but in like the good kind of ridiculous way. And it's an interesting combination of like a night motif and sort of like a very classic car. Colors are great too. I love the mixture of black and gold, gray, a little bit of like a darker gray in a few places, primarily in the legs here, and then those little red highlights in just a few places. It does look out of place for the smaller robot mode because you only really get that red in these struts that connect the shoulder pads, but in the bigger robot mode, they're up there, you've got some in the elbows, and you've got some in the thighs. You get just enough to make it seem like an intentional highlight and not just a out-of-place use of plastic. I love the big wheel well shoulder pad things, and you do get some options with these. There's just enough give in these joints to bring these forward, and that can give you a slightly different look, and it kind of flares the shoulders out a bit, makes the wheels more noticeable and prominent. From the side, it looks a little weird because they're sticking so far forward, but from the front, it's an interesting look. The only thing about this is these pieces here are kind of pressing up against the torso, and I worry that that could cause warping. It doesn't, like, it kind of feels like it settles into place here without that acting as a brace, so I feel like it might be okay, but as a precaution, personally, I just prefer to not do that. Another thing you can do is, because of all the joints that are in here, if you bring these up a little bit, you can actually angle them back on the same joint that was used for the smaller robot mode. And that also has like a completely different look and gives him like a kind of larger shoulders, but not really, but it also frees up the space around his actual shoulders for articulation. So you got options. Though the default is fine, and I feel like because there are so many joints on these shoulders, if you wanted to, you could totally just get the shoulder pad out of the way to move the arm up. It's not a big deal. Color-wise, this guy is great, but also detail-wise, he's got very kind of armored greaves, I think is the term for the boots. But yeah, he's got like a very armored look, very ornate. I like the mixture of like the light gray, the dark gray, and the gold in the knee pad area here. It does make him look very armored. And there's some nice detailing in the midsection as well. I love what they did with like having the upside down car grille as the chest. It's very eye-catching, very fancy, ornate, and intricate looking. Fists and arms also kind of have a little bit of a night motif to them, in particular with the hands and these little flared bits that go over the back of the hand and this kind of plated look in the forearm. Unfortunately, the hands only go out this far. I do wish that they could fold out a little bit further. I could probably adjust that by like either shaving this down or shaving into that gap there, but like I like this toy too much to start physically cutting away at it right now, so I'm not going to be doing that. Not yet. It's not too bad when he's got his accessories on and, you know, you're posing him and stuff. It's just, it's a little bit of a disappointment that the arms, or the fists don't come out a little bit further. And then moving on to the upper body, we've got those nice yellow, we've got those nice gold rings around the detailing there, and some more detailing which we'll look at more in car mode along the shoulders. The toe key itself is really interesting too, how it's basically just like a tiny castle on his back. Weird, but interesting. The two towers almost look like they could be smokestacks when you're looking at them from the front. It's an interesting motif. I'm not super into how big and intrusive the toe key is in general. It gets in the way if you try to store it in the cute mode, though it is doable. It definitely ruins the silhouette of the car, which we'll get into when we get to the car mode. but it's okay, and at least it has a place to store in the robot and car modes, which is more than I can say for some previous Tobot toys, which I continue to harp on. And lastly, there's that head, which is a very, very Robo Knight head. I like how they integrated almost like a muffler kind of shape into the side there, but then you've got the more knight-looking stuff like the faceplate, the visor that's raised up, that does not actually move, it's just molded in. It even has like this ornate mohawk thing. I like that he's got those very, very bright blue eyes. Those stand out so well with the dark plastic around him. The detailing is incredibly nice. I love the use of color on the head with the gray, the black, just that little bit of gold that kind of incorporates into what's happening with the chest. And of course, those blue eyes that I mentioned. Looks very, very cool. He's not too bad in terms of kibble. Like, yeah, he's got these big car chunks hanging off of his legs like puffy pants, and the car windows kind of hanging off too, but this kind of reads as more of like an ornate battle skirt or sash around his waist kind of thing than anything else, so it doesn't bother me at all, and it doesn't really get in the way of articulation, which is actually, this articulation is pretty decent. And then the cape kind of blocks the view from the back anyway. It's a surprisingly clean and effective robot mode. Now, in terms of articulation, which I know I don't cover normally, but I feel like, in fairness, I did cover the articulation for Hello Carbot Skygunner, because it has incredibly good articulation for a Carbot, so I figure I'll do it for Classic as well, because his articulation is pretty darn decent. The only thing he's really missing is thigh and bicep swivels, but you can kind of work around that. So, for the head, it is a ball joint. So you get all of that expressive, like very expressive tilt. You can look up and down. You can't look down super far because of the big junk on the front of the mask there, but it's doable. As I said, there are a ton of joints in the shoulders, so you can angle these up out of the way as much as you need. You can bring the arms up, and the arms can go all the way up. You can kind of see where the joint is there. So like if these weren't in the way, those arms could go straight up. You can rotate forward and backward, which is something Captain Jack can't do. Because of the way this is constructed, just looking at the joints around here, you can see that there's really no way that a bicep swivel would... Like, I can't give it a bicep swivel, and that bums me out. You get an elbow that can straighten out and can also curl pretty much all the way in due to the way that it transforms to make the tiny arms. And then you can move the fist in and out if you want to. You can still move the torso out. You can't really crunch in, like that's just where it sits. You can't go in any further, but you can go out. He also has a waist swivel due to the transformation, and it does lock, but you can kind of fudge it between the ratchets a little bit. If you move this up and out of the way, you can go back that far, can go forward pretty much all the way. There's no thigh swivel, unfortunately, but you can go out all the way. And then with the knees, these will get in the way, so you'll only be able to get a click before they butt into it. But if you move the flaps out of the way, you can bend the knees all the way back for a little under 90 degrees. You can break this joint to kind of bring the, like, have the foot sort of line up with the ground, though I wouldn't recommend it because it's not, like, you'd still have to balance him and everything, but this is not a super solid joint. But it's a thing you can adjust. So yeah, minus the lack of bicep and thigh swivels, he's pretty darn posable. I'm sorry, I was going to close this out and I completely forgot. The way that you can kind of sort of offset the bicep swivel, the lack of a bicep swivel, is there is a butterfly joint here because of the transformation. So you can't swivel the arm forward, but you can twist it back a little bit, which can be used for like thrusting forward poses or just angling the arms a little bit differently so that they're not straight up sitting like right there. So I like that. I like that that joint's there. It offers a little bit more dynamic possibilities, let's say. Getting back to accessories, his car hood, which is very, very ornately designed. I love the gold on the black here. It's very nicely painted, or tampographed, I guess. But anyway, there is a peg here that's folded up in car mode, but you can fold it out for either this mode or the tiny robot mode. And you can peg this into the forearm right here. And because of the shape of the shield and the way that this thing is all in here, you might need to twist the shield around a little bit to get it to fit in here without banging against the shoulder. Or you can rotate it forward like that, in which case you've got a lot more room to play with up there. There's that. Then there's the lance. I'm not a fan of the lance. It's not bad in terms of like molding and all that, and it's got that nice kind of gold plastic color. It looks particularly kind of robotic, but also very much obviously a knight lance. The thing that bugs me about this more than anything is the way that it's meant to go in his hands. For the tiny robot mode, you saw it just pegged into the forearm. That's fine, and you can still do it for the bigger robot mode. You just have to account for this section here possibly banging into the shoulders. But when you put it in his hand, he has pegs on the undersides of his fist so that his fists appear closed and solid from the top, and that in itself doesn't bother me, but this peg, when it goes in, it just sits so far back. That doesn't look good. That hand holding that lance like that, it doesn't look good. It feels like he's holding it way too far back. I feel like that peg should be closer, like maybe up here, because I think it'd look a little bit more natural if he was holding it more like this. Or even if you could just use this peg. Just that. That would be nice. But nope, you gotta plug it in down there if you're gonna do that. So instead of plugging it in there, I just peg it back into his forearm because I feel like that's probably the best place to put it. And this is also where that butterfly joint comes in handy because you can angle the arm back in order to get a little bit more clearance. And that, I think, that looks pretty cool. As a figure in general, I really, really like this. The robot looks really cool. I like the combination of very classic car plus knight. He just looks neat. Bringing back our size comparisons, you can see that he is much larger now in this mode versus the tiny robot mode. Here he is with his other Tobot V buddy, Captain Jack. Here he is with Terricle, and, you know, Terricle is still kind of a hulking beast compared to other Tobots. Here he is with, hang on a sec. Here he is with Tobot V Big Troll. And hang on a second again. Here he is with the Duck Tank. Okay, now it's time to show you the thing that I was most excited about. Now, I thought this guy looked really, really cool. I'll take this stuff off while I'm talking. I thought this guy looked really, really cool when I was seeing the initial product photos and whatnot, but what really sold me on this was that car mode, because you just have to see it to believe it. It's incredible. So, first thing we're going to do is get rid of this toe key. So we're going to rotate the head around and pop it up. And you want to kind of pull up rather than back because it does peg solidly over that peg there. So pull that up, pop the toe key off, and the cape will come with it, or not if you don't put the cape on. This will just go off to the side for now. For the shield, I'm just going to fold that peg in, put that off to the side for now. And now we can get into the transformation proper. So you want to bring up these shoulder bits, just to get them out of the way. Fold in the fists and fold up the arms, sort of like we're going back into the little cute mode. Not quite, but it's partially there. So then rotate him around at the waist, flip this bit all the way back, and just move this out of the way for now. Want to bring the legs forward one click, because you want this lined up kind of like this. And this is where I was saying, like, if you leave this bit down, it will not get in the way. So I'll just bring that out. You don't have to bring this down for the transformation. I'm just doing this to illustrate the point that you can leave this down when you're going into car mode. So this is not actually a necessary step. Anyway, I'm going to move the little trunk bits up, bring the legs back, and fold them in at that shin joint. And then this comes down and will clip into place there. Here as well, bring that forward and bring that up, and then clip that into place. Bring the legs in one click, or however many clicks, and these will clip together right here. And now we're not going to do anything with the top portion here just yet. Because first, we want to rotate the arms back like this, and then hinge them back on that butterfly joint. You usually kind of have to open this up, like bend it out a little ways just so there's some clearance here. So you want to bring this in, and then this will actually peg in. You can just kind of see it. There's a peg there that will peg into the hip, or waist rather. So you want to line that up, get that pegged in, rotate this down, and peg that in. It can be a little tricky to line up at first. You want to bring the arms in first because there are pegs right here that will peg into the underside of the roof section here. So once these are in place, you can bring this down, and that will peg in on the sides, and it'll also clip in back here. And that solidifies most of the back of the car. You can bring in the hood, and this will just kind of, there are these little bits right up here that will kind of sort of clip in underneath these tabs here. So you just bring this in back first and then clip it down, and that'll hold in place. Then hinge these sections forward on this double hinge here, so like so, and then rotate these up, and these will peg in right there, and there's a little tab here that'll also slot in back here, right back there, like so. And here we have Tobot V Classic's absolutely incredible vehicle mode. This is just amazing. I mean, I love Captain Jack's sleek shark sports car mode, but this, it's this incredibly ornate, kind of semi-Rolls Royce looking, extremely classic, like early era car. But it's also a little over the top in a lot of places, especially just how ornate the front of the car is, with all of these headlights and gold-ish bumpers and this grille and the ornate work on the hood, gold trim around the windows. It looks so good, and I love how it's primarily just black and gold. And I like that the roof is more of a dark gray rather than a black, because it gives it the impression of being a different material. So this is probably, if I had to guess, is probably either like intended to imply that it's a soft top, or that it is like a convertible type thing, so this could either come back or be removed entirely. Don't know for sure, not really a car guy, but I like the darker gray instead of black for the roof there. It does just give it a different feel. You got these extremely nicely molded rims for the tires that have these very intricate little spokes. It's all gold. A lot of nice gold plastic in the back, and these little red taillights. This bit's a little bit gappy, yes, but overall, this car mode just looks absolutely incredible. It looks like something out of either Batman the Animated Series, or possibly like the car that was from the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen movie. It's got a very old world graphic novel feel to the way that it's designed and the way that it's presented, and I just adore this. You even got the spare tires on either side with the side mirrors kind of mounted on top of them. The paint in a few places does feel a little inconsistent though. Like if you're looking at it like this bit here, the gold kind of becomes harder to read towards the middle there. I feel like maybe things were a little off when putting the paint on right there. And then if you look at this door handle versus this door handle, this kind of feels a little bit lacking. Just a little bit. It's not any kind of like, you know, oh, this is terrible or anything like that. It's just like little nitpicky things that I've noticed. But this car mode is the loveliest car mode I've ever seen in a transforming robot. All due respect to Captain Jack. I still think he's fantastic, but this is my new favorite. I love the slope of the grille, how it's kind of nestled between the wheel wells in the front there. This just looks like an incredible vehicle. Now, in terms of the accessory storage, you cannot put the cape anywhere on this guy, really. You could possibly clip it into place when you clip in the toe key back here by like either putting it there or up like this, but that's ridiculous. But you could potentially do it, but to store the toe key, this just clips onto the back here. And that's the only time those clips are used, and this is okay. It does ruin the silhouette of the car a bit with these big stacks on the back, and, you know, it looks like they're basically just carrying a Castle Grayskull playset because they can't fit it in the trunk. But it's okay. The thing that gets me is this, because the only place to put the lance is plugging it into what was the forearms on either of the robot modes. So now you get this. And this does ruin the silhouette of the car for me. I really wish that that lance could have stored underneath, but it can't. There's no way. There's no room under there. You can see that there's just no way. You can't creatively nestle things in there. It's not gonna work. And that is a shame, because it's just, if it could just store in a way that wasn't quite as obvious. And again, this, I'm just not into how that sticks up like that. It is what it is. At least it can clip on. I will say that. It's not like with Big Trail or Troll where it just sits off to the side somewhere. You can store the tow key, but this is definitely how I prefer to have the vehicle mode, because it's just so much cleaner that way. It just looks so nice. Anyway, size-wise, as with a lot of Tobot stuff, even though they have gotten a little smaller over the years, it's still extremely large next to a standard deluxe. Here he is with Captain Jack, and what's interesting here, because I haven't actually really put the car modes next to each other yet, but he's a fair bit smaller than Captain Jack. Like, he's a little bit taller, and he doesn't slope quite the same. Like, Jack is more of a wedge, but like, Jack is a bigger car, but Classic ends up being a slightly taller robot. I mean, granted, yeah, Jack is like bulkier, but it's just interesting how the smaller car ends up being the bigger robot. That's, I can always appreciate when that kind of engineering magic happens. Here he is with Terrical, and I'm sure this size discrepancy is no surprise to anyone. And here he is with the duck tank. And that is gonna do it for Tobot V Classic. I know it's a little weird for me to end on the vehicle mode, but just look at this. Look at this. It's too beautiful for me not to end on this. He does have his limitations, and there are a few things, like I said, that do kind of bum me out, like the tow key storage and the weapon storage in vehicle mode, but it's fine. I can't really complain, because the car mode is too gorgeous. The cute little robot mode is actually cute and fun. That at the very least, it feels like they put some thought into it, because there is some actual like molding and stuff, and he has a second head. And then that final robot mode is also just, it's really good. This is a really, really good Tobot toy, and I'm extremely glad I finally got my hands on it. I did not think that anything would be able to replace Captain Jack as my favorite Tobot anytime soon, but yeah, however many months later, this thing comes along and just blows the pirate shark out of the water. So yeah, I cannot recommend this guy enough. He is so cool. I am semi-tempted to go and get Lightning as well, but shelf space and money being what it is, I'm content with just this guy if this is the only one from that line that I end up getting. Whatever your thoughts on Tobot V Classic, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. And remember, art is more than meets the eye.